Francis Hintermann is one of the giants of thought leadership, overseeing a team of 350, you heard that right, at a very large company, shall we say. A proud Frenchman, he's been based in the US for many years, but he maintains strong ties back to France and has links to academia in both countries. Indeed, one of his passions is the next generation of talent coming through, and I love talking to him about what he calls anti-pessimism in the face of scare stories about content and research jobs being disappeared by AI. We spoke about how AI use is evolving, even faster than expected, he said, and changing areas such as market research in all kinds of ways. And that just means you really have to bring your ethics along. Look out for his 3 R's of ROI too, and so much more. We could have spoken for hours, but here, now, it's time for our next SenseMaker session.
And now, as part of Collective Content's SenseMaker Session podcast, today's content leader is Francis Hintermann, Accenture Growth Strategy Global Research Executive Director. With thanks to our sponsor, Highbeam Global, a global full-service market research firm, today's episode was filmed in October 2025 at Gotham Studios, New York City.
So today I'm very lucky as part of our SenseMaker series to have Francis Hintermann with us from Accenture. Francis, big welcome to you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Not at all, not at all. Now, you're well known across the industry and thought leadership and research. Accenture's a huge name. And also you've been there in various roles for many years, I think about 27 years?
27 years, yes.
Yeah, tell us about some of the twists and turns over that time. Like, how did you end up where you are?
Okay. Well, first of all, it's not exactly 27 years. In my view, it's 20 times 1 year, in the sense that at the end of each year, I try to do an honest assessment about the value I've been creating for the company, for our clients, what I've been learning myself, and the fun I've got in my work. And I do the same with, of course, my boss every year. So that's how I ended up doing what looks to you is 27 years, but to me, it's really been 20 times 1 year.
And it feels just fresh every year?
It just feels fresh, yeah, because when I joined this company, it had a different name at the time. It was not called Accenture. It had a different size as well. It's now 10 times bigger than it was when I joined the company. And of course, my role has been changing as well on the way. I created the beginning, I was recruited to create a research team in Paris, and in essence, we're two, and now I lead a team of 350 people. So it's been lots of changes on the way, of course.
So from that era of, you were painting the picture of, being 10 times smaller, and the Anderson Consulting days around that. So proportionately, though, this area has got much more significant for the company.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a bit about you as a, clearly it's a global company, global colleagues, clients, you name it. But still very strongly a Frenchman in the US, in New York, where we are now. But you've maintained those ties also back with France and Europe. Tell us about that kind of setup that you have, and living here as not just a proud Frenchman, but with a local French community and setup as well.
Yeah. I feel first of all very privileged to live here. I'm of course an immigrant in America, and lucky to have a green card and working here. And when I say I feel privileged, because I think we live in a dangerous world, and I feel privileged to be in a country which is strong. And coming from where I come from, and you were mentioning my roots in France, and I actually come from a family where on my mother's side, the family is Jewish, and the family had to go through what lots of Jewish people had to go for World War II. And at the time, my grandmother had to leave a French territory and to seek refuge in a small town in the mountains of Morocco. And the reason I'm here today is because she found a way through that. And I always kept in me and with my family that we live in a world which has been fragile and uncertain for a very long time. I think some people think it's more dangerous now. I think the world has been dangerous forever, actually. And So I feel very privileged to live in this country. And of course, being French, I keep my roots in France. And for me, it's absolutely critical to, first of all, encourage the relationship, the friendship between America and France, and at my humble level to work on that. And to work on exchanging ideas, exchanging the way to work, and help companies in France to come to the US and vice versa.
It's a great way of looking at things. And obviously the Franco-American friendship goes back many centuries, and you're just part of the latest chapter. And those roots back to France. So in academia, for example, tell us about some of that work you do.
Yeah, for me, it's important in my day-to-day activities that, again, I feel I was lucky to end up where I ended up. And so to pass on some of the knowledge, some of the know-how to the next generation, it's a way to give back. And I give back to the university where I come from, which is called Sciences Po in Paris. I was lucky enough to graduate there, and that's why 20 years ago, I went there and volunteered to teach there, and I've been teaching to students for now 2 decades, and I'm super happy to meet some of my former students actually in New York, some of them in Paris, some of us in different places in the world. But to help the next generation to take off, for me, is something important.
So speaking about the younger people, next generation coming into industries, whether it's in content or tech, there's been a lot of skepticism and pessimism out there. But you believe there are really good jobs out there for the future as well.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I do not believe 1 second about the pessimism that you can see in the media here and there right now. Of course, there are some challenges for the new generation, as there has been for every generation. What matters at this point in time, in my view, is for young people to get the relevant qualifications. And data science, for instance, is typically the type of qualifications and skills that I advise young people to get. And then it's part of the obligation that we have, a moral obligation that we have for people like you, like me, to actually create the jobs of the future for the next generation. And yes, their jobs are going to be different. If I go back 25 years, I was putting data into an Excel spreadsheet day in, day out. Do I wish that as a job for the new generation? No, certainly not. I believe they can do something much more interesting than what I was doing at the time. Do I believe that they have to invent the job? To some extent, yes, but to a larger extent, it is the role that I have with other leaders to, people who are in charge of organization right now, to invent this job for the next generation and to make the next generation feel welcome into our organization. For me, that's absolutely critical.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the setup that you have.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the size of your team already. Other people who will look at the outside, from the outside at Accenture and be maybe envious of the resources you have and the setup. How does it work? Who do you report to? What's your direct team look like? What's the ethos of that team? That kind of thing.
Yeah. No, thank you. Well, nothing is a given, first of all, right? So we had to convince our management day after day that it's worth investing in a team like the team I have the privilege to lead every day. I report to the chief strategy officer of a company for a good reason, is in the sense that the thought leadership, the research activities are there to support the development of a business of Accenture and to support the development of a business of our clients. And that's why we've got this very tight relationship with a strategy officer of a company.
Okay. And you feel like I sense you feel that's a good reporting line.
Mm-hmm.
We speak to people who report to CMO, sometimes to a different member of the board. And maybe it says something about how people consider thought leadership and this part of the business. It feels like that's a good fit for you.
I think it's a good fit for the DNA of Accenture.
Right.
I would not say it's a good fit for nearly every company on the planet.
Right.
But I think for Accenture, it's actually a good fit. Having said that, as you were mentioning CMOs, I've got a very strong relationship with a marketing organization and the CMO in particular. It's all a matter between the difference between the plain line and the dotted line, if you like. But we've got plain line with CSO and a dotted line to the CMO, of course.
Yeah, that feels like that helps a lot to have that good CMO relationship.
To me, it's absolutely critical because I lead the production of the thought leadership, the production of the research. the marketing organization is in charge of a channel, is in charge of a distribution to clients, to media, and so on and so forth. So working very tightly and very well in a collaborative manner with a marketing organization, for me, it's actually part of a core of my job every day.
Okay, let's move on to talk about AI, because we always do. But you've been very, very bullish, I would say, and very what's the word I'm looking for? Committed to learning about this whole area for many years. I've looked up a lot of your historical comments, and I'm wondering whether it's to do with research, content creation, general governance, or the areas where AI is best used. Like, do you feel like your view has changed much, say, in the last couple of years?
Well, first of all, we saw it coming for a long time at Accenture, because Accenture is really positioned at the intersection of business and technology. So we are lucky enough to have people who are really focused on technologies, who are great experts into that, and are feeding the way we can develop our own work every day. And so we saw that coming for a long time. And we started investing in it a long time ago. And as you ask me about if my opinion has changed in the past few years, yes, it has changed to some extent, in the sense that I think it has only been faster than I expected, and still getting faster than I was expecting initially, in the sense that the technology is making progress way faster that businesses can absorb that in the processes and improve their performance. So the value gap in between the way the technology is progressing and the way business processes are being changed is only increasing. And so this value gap, and the way we can help companies to decrease it and absorb some of the value that they can absorb with the new technologies, that's where we focus our attention.
Yeah, which I'm thinking about that's only more opportunity for you, right? To help make sense of that world.
Correct.
Bring people along. Okay.
Correct.
Let's focus on research for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
How has AI changed the way that you guys conduct research, for example?
Yeah, for me, it's a complete reinvention of the way that we look at research. If you look at the value chain of research from ideation, it's obvious to everyone now that you can ideate with models, with LLMs, much faster and better than that you could in previous iterations of technologies. If you look at the end of the value chain, people who are in editing, in writing, it's obvious that you can do a lot better now with models, and much faster that you could before. I mean, as a French, I can even write in proper English now, which is to me something that I did not expect 2 years ago. And what is extremely interesting is that now we can actually address what is in the middle of the value chain, really the way that you undertake research, the way you design surveys, the way you interview people, the way you gather the insight from interviewing people, the way you collect data, the way you analyze data. That's the core of the research work, and that is really being transformed by all these new models. And to me, that's a really fascinating thing.
Yeah, and I'd love to ask you about that. So traditionally, there's a lot of heavy lifting there, a lot of field work that takes time and money, finding the right people, panels, et cetera, et cetera. You talked before about synthetic data and that side of things. That's not without its controversies, right? It's not always going to go well.
No.
But you also see great promise there in that particular. Tell us more.
Yeah, no, there is lots of innovation going there, and I don't think we've reached the maximum of the innovation yet. So you can see that there are still already parts where it works pretty well. If you think about the design of a survey, the way you write a questionnaire, you can do that much faster and probably better than you could before. If you think about the number of calls you can make when you interview people now with the support of AI, you can make AI interview people actually. And of course, as you know, we've got ethics rule. You do not look as a person without telling people. You tell people you're going to be interviewed by AI. But once you've said that, it's super efficient, because then you can have much more interviews per minute that you could have before. So already you can see the impact on the productivity of the work. The next step is about interviewing agents in terms of interviewing people. When I say interviewing, it's of course more an AI simulation, let's say, but you can build AI agents which are, in a sense, digital twins of real people. Think about consumers like you and me. Think about C-level executives like we interview every day. Based on what the information is available out there, you can now build digital twins which have got a lot to do with the real people, quote unquote, And then you can imagine interviewing these AI agents in the future. And guess what? For those who have been in, survey interviewing people for all their life, it's a well-known factor that after a while, the attention of people is diminishing, right? Mm-hmm. Generally in the industry, it's 20, 25 minutes. People get bored and stop answering in the right way. Right. Or it's during the weekend or during the evening. And guess what? If you interview an AI agents, you can do that day in, day out, during the weekends, 24-hour a day. You've got suddenly you open lots of possibilities that were not open before. And what is even more important is that you can compress the time of production a lot. Right. And we all know that in all this thought leadership research work, the tunnel effect of having 6 weeks of field work, as we do in B2B survey, has always been an issue for the client, an issue if things are changing rapidly in the world. Now, if you can compress the time, you can create more value. Of course, as you mentioned, is it perfect already? No, it's not perfect already. And we're doing some pilots, we're testing it. Okay. And we can see that, there are some things which go well and things which go less well still. So we're still in the learning phase. But my point is that as we are in the knowledge economy, the more you build the knowledge, the more you can develop your expertise on that knowledge, the further you're going to increase the competitiveness versus those who have not done it yet. So that's why my advice is always to people to test it, to try it, because I believe that those who test it first will eventually increase their competitiveness against others.
You've answered what I was going to say about how much are you already piloting this, and you're talking about that. And even the phrase digital twins, I think in the last decade, we've got used to hearing that in certain scenarios, so like utilities, for example, in cities. But to hear it in this context is really, really interesting, I think. And so this is we'll all be hearing about this, right, in terms of market research. And Okay.
No, and at the core of it, the odd realization is that you and I and some other people are much more predictable than we think we are, and and that is what is at the core of it.
Yeah, I have no doubts in my case. But onto the content. You've said before that that great thought leadership needs a data science core. Is that I know that's your ethos. Is that a failing in certain other places? And what about smaller organizations that maybe don't have the heft of lots of research and lots of data scientists, for example? They can still produce great thought leadership, surely.
Yeah, of course. And my point is not related to the size of the organization. My point is related to the skills that you develop within your organization. We are in an era where content production is being democratized because you've got access to all these tools that nobody could access before. And the marginal cost of accessing these tools is actually not so high. So it's really an era of democratization when you think about content production. So my point is different. My point is that given the importance that data science has now and will have in the future, at least that's my belief, it's important to have data scientists at the core of your organization. That's really my point. We've started at Accenture to recruit data scientists nearly a decade ago. Now it's at the core of our research team, and I can see some of my esteemed competitors doing the same. And so that's some are more advanced than others. Obviously, every company has got its own DNA and its own way of doing. But my point is that if you do not have a data science core today, you're going to have issues in the market in the next 3 years. That I'm totally convinced of that.
I want to ask how many data scientists there are at Accenture, but I feel like you're not going to tell me, or you're going to say, well, just in my team. But it must be, given the size of the organization, there must be one of the highest numbers of any organization in the world, I'm guessing.
Yeah, we've got something at Accenture. We've got something in between 60 and 70,000 data scientists right now.
Okay, I was going to let that hang there for a minute. Let's talk a little bit about the ROI of content. And how do you see that? Is there a debate about that within the company? And clearly everyone's fighting over finite resources, and you want to prove your worth all the time and for all those 20 single years, etc. How do you see that world of ROI?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's absolutely normal that in any organization like the organization in which I work, which is a business and a for-profit business, we have to prove that our activity has got a return on the investment that the company is doing. So to me, that's absolutely logical. And the point on in that debate is that, in my view, it's a multi-criteria approach that one has to use. And the way we use it is that we look first as the influence we have on sales, on revenues, the type of leads that we help to create. So that's number one. The number two is the relationship that we help to create. So the doors that we help to open with some companies where we do not have any presence yet, or some business units at clients that we do not have an established presence yet. And the third one is the contribution to the reputation and the brand, if you like. And it's really the combination of these three criteria that eventually is analyzed within the company. The impact on revenues, the impact on relationship, the impact on reputation.
Yeah, and I think the third area, the reputation, brand, etc., it's always difficult, but there are established methodologies for such things. The relationship one in the middle, the second number you gave, how do you do that? Because for us, that's a huge thing in the world of business, and being a meaningful company that people can trust.
Yeah.
But you can't just scale that like software or something. You have to, it's hard. That's hard. And then you're underpinning that with great content. How do you see the result of that? Is it anecdotal? Is there some sort of data that's behind that?
Yeah. No, it's a very good question. It's a combination of both.
Okay.
It's a combination of having the relevant anecdotes that you help to develop the connection, the discussion, to speak about the future, not necessarily to sell, but to speak about the future with some clients at some events and so on and so forth. And the number of origination of meetings, the number of meetings in which the thought leadership that you created was presented, and so on and so forth. So it's really a combination of both approaches.
Yeah. You get much feedback of people saying, I took this into this big meeting and someone said, no, we think that's garbage. What are you guys saying? But I guess it's still a conversation.
That's a rule of the game. Yeah. And we're in a competitive environment, and that's a rule of the game. Always to compare. We compare ourselves to our competitors all the time. I used to, earlier in my career, I used to represent the CEO of Accenture at some of the G20, B20 summits around the world. Okay. And it happens that I meet, in this case, it was the representative of McKinsey, and we met every year at similar summits, and I was always comparing what I was doing versus my competitor, because if I was not, the CEO of Accenture would come back to me and say, look at what McKinsey has been doing, can you do better? So it was kind of, the challenge I took year after year, and it could be McKinsey, it could be Deloitte, it could be another one, IBM could be another one, of course, but it's a competitive world, and so we live in that, and we accept it.
Yeah, I can see that. And it's also, we've talked to some of your peers, it's quite a collegiate world. You're friendly with each other. Mm-hmm. You're not always, you understand each other's challenges, shall we say.
Yeah.
I wanted to look back at the beginning. You talked about universities and the next generation. So whether it's back in France or somewhere like NYU here, what does that bring to your role at Accenture, those kind of links?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely critical, because we live in a consulting environment. We need to have people, institution, organization with which we exchange that keep us honest in terms of the rigor of the work that we do, in terms of the discipline that we apply in our research protocols, in terms of being able to differentiate what is, an emerging trend versus what is really the fluff of the day. And that's really what is helping us in our relationship with academia, and vice versa. When we can finance some research done by some academia, we do it because we think it's important as a company that we contribute to the development of our communities. We all know that as a company, we can only thrive in a community that is thriving, and acquiring, developing deeper knowledge on a topic is part of the way we can thrive. And academia play a very important role in that.
Yeah, so it's a two-way street with how it helps you in your role in the company, but also giving back. So coming back to just thought leadership in general, though, we've talked a little bit about whether we think we're standing on the verge of a golden age of thought leadership where great things can happen, or whether we're just on the entering the age of AI slop and all this, just being polluted. So that all the good things that you and others produce maybe gets drowned out. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I think it's a very good question. It's a very good question. I think it's been always a battle for quality, and it is a battle for quality. And the AI slope that you mentioned, of course, there is more content every day, and so that's why the battle that we lead with a few competitors and a few peers and a few colleagues on the quality is absolutely essential to me, because the world is getting more complex every day, and I believe we have a role to play in order to help, in my case, the management of my company and the clients of a company to understand the complexity of the world and to address it. If you speak about the wave of new technologies, if you speak about technologies, the wave of new technologies are getting stronger and faster. If you speak about the complexity of geopolitics, needless to say, it's much more complex now than it used to be a decade ago. If you think as well about the change of generation, the aspiration of a new generation is different from the aspiration of the older generation. And I could add more of these disruption on the way. So to really understand these complexities and act upon them, I believe it's the what we have to do and where we have to help the management and our clients. And to me, that's a battle of quality, because it's when we speak about thought leadership, it's not only having an idea. You can have an idea, and as you were mentioning the AI slope, you can write a blog very easily these days on anything. My point is that thought leadership is having an idea which is supported by evidences, and these evidences are data-driven in most cases. Can be a model, can be new data insights, can be interviews, can be case studies, but you need to have some fresh data, and that should lead to some actionable recommendation. That should lead to some actions. That's the point of thought leadership, is that is there to help C-level executives to address the issues of the day and take actions in their companies. And that is not cheap, because you've got to think hard and based on your experience and the experience of your ecosystem partners, your clients, your company, help clients to take the right decision and implement them in the right way in their own organization. And that is not cheap, and it's not something that you will get out of a model. One of the questions we have all the time, because we are a large organization, you were mentioning that earlier, is what are you doing yourself? And so that's one of the
what are you doing yourself?
Exactly. That's a question we have all the time, and our CEO is always telling me that's the first question she has when she's presenting our thought leadership at the World Economic Forum at Davos, for instance, is that you preach about AI. What are you doing yourself? And so it's always important for us to be able to actually prove that for what we preach, we actually act upon it ourselves, and that does not come out of an AI model. That does not come out a cheap shortcut. When you are a large company, change is not easy. It takes some time, and it's important that then we articulate the lessons we learn from the changes we drive ourselves.
There are a couple of things to unpack from what you've just said there. So first of all, this drive for quality, I completely understand it. And if you're walking into a conference or you're meeting with would-be clients, you have a controlled environment in which to get across your case and use your materials and points of view, etc. And my point about the slop is really just on the general internet, the competition, and especially as people search more and more through, ChatGPT and other engines, getting your good work that never gets surfaced or drowned out. I mean, and have you even noticed any changes in things like the findability of some of your best work? So that's a huge challenge, right?
That's a challenge of the day. As experts call it, generative engine optimization. That's really the challenge of the day, and we are on it as others.
And we're seeing a huge thing, talking to all of our clients about GEO and how can they make a difference, and sometimes slightly different, pulling in different directions between that world and the traditional SEO world. And it's
correct. And that's why we were mentioning earlier, that's why I work very closely with the marketing organization of Accenture and the CMO in particular, because for us, it has an impact on the way that we produce the research, on the type of outputs that we produce, and the type of the way we're going to present it, in order to make sure that people who are going through, models, and we all do every day, actually find what we produce. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And one of the other points I was going to pull on was you said the not just for people to find and consume, but to take action.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. That's a really great way to think about it. And again, very, very hard.
Mm-hmm.
Not always easy to have somebody do that, but then to prove maybe they've done that, mm-hmm. and you're really getting the results you're looking for. What does a good action look like? And don't just say sort of become a Accenture client or a customer. So, but what how do you look at that? How do you see the evidence?
Yeah, well, if we take the example of generative AI, one of the outputs that we produced earlier this year was based on the first 2,000 engagement that we've been running with clients on generative AI, and at the time, there was no company on the planet who had run that amount of generative AI engagements with their clients. And we had access to a treasure of proprietary data that nobody had access to except ourselves, because we run this engagement. And leveraging this data to actually articulate to our client, that's how we can see what went right, what went wrong, how to address that, because we've got the data that nobody else has, or at least nobody else had at the time. It's part of a differentiation of our company.
Interesting. And I'm guessing you'd think a lot of organizations are maybe sitting on data, historical data, which they're maybe not making enough use of, given now that they can go back to that and get insights or something unique that other people don't have.
Yeah, it's typically a secret hidden in plain sight of the AI transformation, right? Is that if you do not fix your data backbone, first of all the AI models you can put on top of them will not result in creating all the value that you expect. And that's why we always advise our clients to start by fixing their data. Yeah.
Okay. We're approaching the end of this interview. I must say that as part of the research for this, one of the things I did was to ask a popular AI engine who you are. And
Okay.
and the line that came back, it said, the interplay among consulting, research, and publishing is a repeated motif. I think you'd agree with that, right?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. For me, it's always being at the border between different worlds and helping these different worlds to talk to each other, to understand each other. In between consulting and companies, consulting and academia, consulting and governments, private business and governments. That's one of the lines of what I've been working on for the past 27 years.
Wow. Well, we've come full circle. My last question to you is simply, if you could go back to the beginning of your career, pre Accenture / Anderson Consulting, say you're just coming out of college, like, could you have predicted what's happened? Like, what would you say to your younger self, I guess is the question.
That's a profound question, right? Not an easy one. I think I underestimated the importance of technology initially, the impact of technology on businesses. And that's one of the reasons I had a brief career before joining Accenture. And that's one of the triggers for me to join Accenture, is when I realized how important was new technologies in the way that businesses would grow. And so for me, that would be one point, is from the very beginning, put more emphasis on technology. And the second point is, making sure that every contribution is helping to make the world a better place as much as possible. Because I think in all these technology changes, we did not address so much the question of ethics, the question of responsibility, in our discussion, but of course it's core to what we do, and to me it was important at the time. But I would repeat that and again, because we have to be extremely careful about the way we use these technologies.
Yeah, I love that answer. That's all for today, Francis Hintermann. This has been an absolute pleasure talking to you and getting to know you a bit as a person as well. Thank you so much for being one of our content leaders on this SenseMaker series.
Thank you.
This was the Collective Content Podcast, SenseMaker Sessions. Let us know what you'd like us to make sense of next.